This is the Lynda Steele Show on demand. Subscribe now on iTunes and listen weekdays 2 to 6 on 980 CKNW and on the Radio Player Canada app.
I want to talk now about the Hurricane Michael that swept through Florida, and it just ripped a bunch of homes apart. It was a bad one.
Hurricane Michael is the worst storm that the Florida Panhandle has ever seen. The entire nation and world have watched as this monstrous storm has devastated our Gulf Coast and Panhandle.
I want all North Carolinians to be on alert, from storm surge on the coast to strong winds in the eastern and central parts of North Carolina to rain in the Piedmont and the west. Travel can be treacherous right now, and you should stay off the roads if you can.
Whenever I'm watching that, I think to myself, what is going through the mind of someone who's thinking, yeah, no, I'm just going to camp out here. I'm going to stick it out. I'll be fine. And meanwhile, roofs are flying off and trees are smashing down. It happens all over the place. I mean, clearly not just in the States. It happens here as well. We have our own public safety minister, Mike Farnworth. He toured this area where there's a slow-moving landslide, and there's residents just south of Fort St. John in Old Fort, about 200 people who are being told they have to get out because this landslide cut off the only road to their subdivision about a week ago. There was a meeting on Monday, and residents were told they could be out of their homes for months, maybe even until next summer, if you can believe it. And a bunch of residents have said, nah, I'm not going. They're defying the evacuation orders so that they can go retrieve belongings. And the public safety minister is urging them to stop doing it, saying, you know, they may think they know what's best, but Mike Farmer said, let me be clear. The regional district does not put in place an evacuation order just for the sake of putting in place an evacuation order. So it raises the question, why do they not listen? Why do they put their own lives at risk? I want to bring in a guy now who may have some answers. Glenn McGillivray is the manager of the director of the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. Thanks for joining me, Glenn.
Thank you.
Why do people so often ignore the call to evacuate?
Now, what we're finding, and what a lot of other research is finding, is that you can kind of split people up into basically two groups. And the first group are those people that just don't have the means to evacuate. And I think these people often get forgotten. In Canada and the United States, we're in rich Western countries, and many of us, have the resources to be able to leave, and we kind of forget about the others. But there's a group of people, a large group, that are unable to leave, either financially or physically due to illness, or oftentimes both. And then there's that second group who do have the resources to leave, but choose not to. And there's a whole bunch of different research and theories into why these people stay. And for the most part, I think people are just kind of fooling themselves, thinking, well, this is not going to be so bad, I'll be okay. I've lived through these events before, I should be fine. Oh, my house is made of brick, I'll be good. And that sort of thing. And so we have a couple of different discussions that are going to have to take place surrounding this whole issue.
Yeah, well, let's first of all talk about the fact that people seem to be hardwired to underestimate the risk. Why would that be?
Yeah.
We're just overly optimistic?
I think it's complicated. Whenever you start talking about psychology, it's difficult. But there are a whole bunch of things that kind of come together in a confluence that make people want to stay. One of the things people do is they look around them, and if other people aren't preparing, they say, well, I should be okay. They look at the past and say, oh, I've been through 4 of these in the past, nothing ever happened. I was fine, so I should be okay this 5th time. I've got a good sturdy house, I'll just, store some water and some food, and I'll be good in a couple of days. Or there's a whole long list of things that they're supposed to do, so they do a couple of things on that long list and say, oh, I'm good. We just kind of fool ourselves, and it I think, kind of centers around this whole idea that, yeah, this thing's going to happen, it's just not going to happen to me. And it's kind of a mystery as to how to get to the root of it.
Right. And then when it does happen to that person and they're sitting on their roof with the water line up, 12 feet, are they thinking then, oh, oops, it was just this one-time mistake, or there's deep regret? Is that person then more likely to evacuate the next time?
I don't know. We certainly should hope so. But really the problem there then is that they're putting first responders at risk. They're redirecting resources that should go elsewhere. Or many times they just don't make it. And so This is really an issue we have to get to the heart of very quickly.
Well, especially since we see natural disasters, it seems, on a weekly basis around the world. What's a better way going forward then to help save lives?
I really wish I had the answer to that. But one of the big things is that what some research was finding is that when people have confidence in the emergency management agency that's working in their area, they tend to evacuate more often. And when evacuation plans and emergency plans are made public and are known, people tend to evacuate more. So we have to work in those two areas so that these agencies can improve their relationship with people, and therefore, people have more confidence in them. And we have to get the emergency plans out there into the public's hands a little bit more, whether it's through social media or other things like that. And I think those two things together will get at least a larger group evacuating when these things do happen.
Right. And so how do you think Canadians fare, generally speaking, when it comes to, emergency officials getting the word out as compared to these big disasters we see in other parts of the world?
Well, I think our emergency managers do a pretty good job here, but then they're up against this psychology I'm telling you about. They're up against some of these economic issues that we're up against. So, you look at the southern Alberta flooding in 2013, there was a lot of people that stayed put and had to be saved. Wildfires, we have a similar situation, forecast floods. So, although we're not getting the Hurricane Michaels and the Hurricane Florences here, we have our share of big events, and I don't think Canadians are faring much better than anybody else in terms of evacuation.
Yeah, and no doubt we will see more instances here in Canada, much closer to home. What is your advice to someone who is sitting there the next time and watching TV or hearing the radio and saying, yeah, you should get out?
It's a big gamble. It's a big game they're playing. They're playing with their lives. They're playing with their families' lives. They're playing with the lives of first responders. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you evacuate and it turns out to be nothing, well, you can chalk that one up to experience. But if you are wrong and the event does unfold the way it's supposed to, and you're harmed, your family's harmed, or a first responder loses a life to try to get to you, that's a bad thing. And so we got to heed these warnings. They're made with the best intentions in mind, and the situation's only going to get worse in the future. And so really we got to get through to people that this is not a game that's being played.
Glenn McGillivray is Managing Director at the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction. Glenn, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.